Don't sound like a sausage when you do it though. Just
Don't sound like a sausage.
yeah,
Moon Knight. So first episode came out on Wednesday.
it did,
It
and
did.
it took until Thursday for me to watch it because I was not that excited for it. But I was wrong because it's actually quite good.
Yeah, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised by it. To be fair, I think we
Yeah,
both agreed because we had a little chat before. We weren't too impressed with the CGI.
yeah. I suppose if we just talk about like general impressions first,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
I mean, I
I didn't, I didn't expect a lot at all, and I was not hyped about it at all before actually watching Moon Knight, and that's why I left it till today to watch it. But then when I did watch it, I was actually like, you know what, this is good, and I'd say it's the best Disney Plus Marvel show that there is. And so long as all the other episodes are as of high quality.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's the strongest start to a Disney Plus like Marvel show
Yeah,
so far.
I I think they started it off in a really good way. Like they introduced the character well because it's a character that if you're like me and you and just the general populace, you just don't have a clue who Moon Knight is.
No,
Um,
exactly.
and I think they introduced him in a good way. And I think the way that they ended that episode was good, nice and suspenseful. Um, and you only got a brief glimpse of Moon Knight in the first episode.
Yeah, which
Um,
that scene would taken from I think one of the reveal trailers. So it was good that they hadn't
yeah,
introduced
yeah,
too much more of the character. You know, lead you wanting more in the next episode, which obviously by the looks of things we're going to get a bit more of Moon Knight. Um,
I I think Oscar Isaac, the way he plays Stephen and all the other various characters that he comes under playing, because obviously he has multiple
yeah,
personalities or whatever. Because I think another one of them's Mark, isn't there? Because I think there's one scene where he finds the phone
yeah,
in his like flat locked behind like some bit in the ceiling, and he looks through it, and when he calls up that lady, she's like, blah 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 blah, Mark, and he's like, eh,
who's Mark?
who's Mark? Who's Mark? Um, but I think he plays that character like so well. And I think there was one bit, it's when he's got the date and he goes to the steakhouse,
Yeah,
and there's the bit where he doesn't realize that obviously he's missed it by 2 days, and I was actually like genuinely like a bit upset with that. I was like, oh,
I tell you what was
I can't
great.
believe you've missed out, mate.
What was great about that scene though is the fact that yeah he's missed out on his day and he established just before that he was it a vegan or a vegetarian, and the fact that he goes and has a steak anyway as Stephen, it's it shows that he knows that something's not quite right, and obviously somebody within himself is eating steak almost behind his own back,
Yeah,
which
I
is
think they get it across in a good way though, because it's the character itself I think on the surface comes across as being quite like light-hearted, and there's a
yeah
lot of comedic relief, but there's never like slap you in the face. This is comedic relief. It's
no
not like the old Mandarin
no
in Iron
no
Man 3, say, or all the other like comedic reliefs that you get in the MCU. That character is just subtly funny all the time because he's quirky. But then when you have the like more hard hitting moments, I think it makes it more digestible. Because
that
like what you said the other day after you watched it to me is it's just watchable, isn't it? Like,
yeah
and that doesn't mean that it's like bad. Like it's very good and above average, but it is just a very watchable
it is yeah.
episode.
I think what sets the tone though is that opening scene, so we might as well go right to the beginning. And it's the introduction of Ethan Hawke's character, and the fact that you don't really see much of him, except he lays out a cloth and then he's filling up a glass and then he drinks from the glass and almost has this cult like uh, ritual, and then he smashes the glass and puts it in his sandals. And he puts on
Yeah,
the
and
sandals and walks away.
I was just really perturbed by that scene. Like I
Yeah,
remember watching it, and then for like the next like few minutes after it, I was just like, "Oh, imagine walking on glass." Like I don't know, I just got really hung up on that.
but
It just
it sets the mood for almost a slightly dark. obviously it's Disney, so it's not going to be dark like the old X-Men stuff, but it's more leaning towards that 20th Century Fox X-Men side of things, where it's a bit darker. And again, it picked up a bit later on where Stephen had come back into his own body, and he looked like he's basically been chucked out of a very high building, and he's got a broken jaw. It was a bit. It's a different turn for Disney. Obviously, it's not Deadpool levels yet, but it's a slightly more
The
mature direction.
the man who plays him, what's his name? That
Uh,
plays that character.
Ethan Hawke.
Let's have a Ethan Hawke. Is that what he's called?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ethan Hawke, I think he looks really similar to. Do you know? Not the Incredible Hulk that's part of the MCU that was made by Universal, but do you know the one that came before it?
Oh, the Edward
Before Edward
Norton one.
Norton did it. His dad. I think they look so similar, but
See,
I feel like that's quite.
I think he looks a lot like Kevin Bacon, but with long hair.
All right, yeah, I get it as well.
Yeah, you see that.
I think I I think he looks like a younger person that's been made to look older,
It does a bit,
which
yeah.
isn't the case. But maybe that's compliments to him for just being youthful.
Yeah. But I tell you
Yeah,
what,
so there's that.
I'm looking
There's that.
forward to the. Sorry, go on.
No, so there's that scene, isn't there?
Yeah.
And then as he walks off,
To,
I remember picking up on it. Like fades away, but there's some like arch structure in the background that just remains slightly more prominent before it fades away. And I was like,
yeah.
maybe this is irrelevant, but I feel like that's something that I just don't know enough to pick up on what the relevance of that was. But I watched it and I was like,
See,
that's something.
see, I quite like the introductions to that character, as I've already said, and it reminds me a lot of Far Cry 5's main villain, Joseph Seed, in which his, I think, two brothers and sister are part of this very Americanized like cult, and I'm getting similar sort of vibes from that, especially what we see later on when that that those few
Yeah, they're
scenes
all
in
in
the Alps,
the
and
Alps or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's this village congregates, and again that was a serious sort of serious esque scene, but they managed to just put a little bit of comedy in it with Stephen being obviously pointed out, and again I think
He's very likable. I like how they did that, and it just made him likable. And I
yeah,
thought it was because obviously he gives the like special cultish chant out, and then they all drop to their knees, and then he
oh
doesn't.
bollocks.
He obviously doesn't realize, and then oh bollocks, and then drops down slightly slower. I just thought like that's I don't know, that would just be like
I think as
so many people's reaction, and
yeah
that wouldn't it? You just think, oh hell.
I think as well it sort of takes out that typical movie trope of somebody's trying to blend in and it works sort of thing even though they're a second late, whereas that
I mean,
it clearly tries to do it, but obviously the villain is showing how smart. Well, it's not, you don't have to be smart to do that, but in terms of film, it's quite a smart move, and
yeah, he
they
thinks,
show
doesn't he,
yeah
rather than just chase him around or sniff him out with his superpowers or whatever it might be.
yeah
But I suppose there is one bit in that where it's a bit like, he's getting chased by these goons, and what does he do to hide? He puts his hood up, but nobody else has got
yeah
the hood up. Like, and they literally run next to him, and like once they're about 3 meters away, he chucks his hood up, and then it's like he's disappeared. Where has he
yeah.
gone? Um, but that's like a very
I
minor
suppose the
thing.
scenes balances themselves out, but I think we should talk about the scene afterwards, or the action sequence rather.
What?
It started well, and I say it started well because it's before he got in that that muffin ice cream van thing, where
It,
he
if it was just like if the CGI was done well, it probably would have been like a decent scene because the bit leading into it was quite good,
well that was the bit.
but it just looked bad, didn't it?
Yeah, the scene leading in where it's clear that we're following Stephen. We're not following Mark. We're not following any other persona of Stephen. We're following Stephen, and the fact that he sort of jumps in and out of time, I guess, because obviously he's not conscious when he's this other character, and we just see the before and after. We don't need the action, and it tells 1,000 words. And it was great with that sort of voice in the background
Yeah, I
because
like how
obviously some like
when
Egyptian god or whatever the relation is to Moon Knight.
yeah, when he couldn't trust, let's say, Stephen,
Yeah,
to basically
Dro-
sort the situation out himself, he just took over control.
yeah,
And the first time it did it, it was really quite good because it obviously you get that like warping of the noise, and then it like cuts to black, and then it cuts to the next bit, um, and like you're just like, what's going on there then? Because I think the first time it does it is when he wants the when Ethan Hawke's character, what's it called that he wants off him? It's like
it's
the
that
small
scarab
gold,
thing. Yeah,
yeah, and he wants it off him. And there's that scene where he can't give it to him because
yeah,
he obviously his body's taken over control, and it's quite funny. Um, and I suppose it's quite nice the contrast because there's quite a humorous scene there where he's joking around. It fades to black, and then the
there's blood
immediate thing after
everywhere.
it is blood everywhere. Yeah, like I thought that was like I don't know, it was quite good, and I think that was like the comedic part handled quite well
Yeah,
because it was such a like contrast, such a slap in the face after that scene of like, oh, this has changed tune already. Because I suppose it previous Marvel formulas it just then continued to be wacky and weird,
yeah.
or they just not really make that big of a deal in it and move on. But that did catch me off guard, and I was like, yeah, that's quite good actually. And then obviously you get more of it through that chase scene. Um, and I mean, to be honest, that chase scene looks like
I
the
think
people who did the prequels for Star Wars could have made it because it's just
yeah,
not
it's not
good,
great.
is it?
I get that it's obviously it's TV, and we've got to remember that it's for a TV show. So imagine like
I know, but
CBS
like
as something
the
producing it.
Mandalorian and Boba Fett are TV shows,
Oh yeah, exactly.
and they're absolutely stunning in comparison.
They are, and I agree. And I think it's probably the letdown of that episode. Whether the other episodes do it better, I'm not too sure. It's certainly
I mean,
not. It's not worse than CW's The Flash, like season 6 onwards CGI,
the,
because that is
or just
absolute.
any of the Flash.
The first few seasons were all right, but it certainly went downhill after about season 4, season 5.
To be
It's not
honest,
great now.
thinking about that episode, that chase scene, it seems like something they might have just added retrospectively
It
to
could have
it
been,
later
yeah,
on. Maybe that's why the CGI is not up to the level that we expect with Marvel.
yeah,
But it's just filler, isn't it, to make the episode to get it up to that 48 minutes? Because that you could have had that episode without that lengthy chase scene. It didn't really establish much. You saw obviously Moon Knight or whatever this inner like being with inside of him is,
yeah,
um, take control a few more times. But you could have just cut out on all the like just the bollocks basically,
yeah.
because it just looked bad. It just
It
looked bad,
it did.
and
It wasn't. It's the CGI
and
wasn't
it's
what we expected. But if the CGI was good in that scene, or that sequence rather, it would have been
it would have been good,
it would have
yeah.
been good because it was the action was there. Obviously, it's typical. There's a big lorry with logs on it. It's gonna jackknife and crash into a car.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
expect that from a film or a TV show. So if the CGI was better, it would have made that sequence better. Now I don't think it should have been taken out, but the CGI maybe a little bit more time on
Yeah,
that.
it seems like a small thing
It is,
for us
yeah,
to pick up on, but like a TV and film, it's like when you're telling a story, it should be immersive, shouldn't it? And you shouldn't like when you're watching it, you almost forget about the fact that you are watching TV and you forget what's going on and you're not aware of, say, that time's passing by, like
mm,
to an extreme extent. But I think when you go from it just looking nice and then you just all of a sudden have really janky CGI that's just really jarring and you weren't expecting it,
yeah.
it just completely like kicks you out of sync.
It
Because
doesn't
I
let
was
yeah.
watching that and enjoying that, and then as soon as like that nasty CGI came up, I was just like, because you'd said you'd watched it and the CGI was bad. And then I was thinking to myself, like, it'll be all right. It'll be like how it's a bit iffy sometimes in the
Oh,
films, and then
it,
no.
as you said, it's about immersion, and it certainly takes you out of that immersion that the first 20 minutes sets you up. Now, after that sequence, it was fine again, because obviously it wasn't as CGI intensive, but that specific like action sequence, which is probably about 7.5 minutes of filler, it shows. But
Yeah.
maybe the rest of the show isn't as CGI intensive. Who knows? We'll have to
I
discuss that
think
in later episodes.
another point about it that I didn't like so much, and obviously about how small this is proof of that. I thought it was really quite good. Is I didn't realise until someone explicitly said that they were in London because the Cockney accents that they have that like just the people in London
Yeah.
doing are just so bad. I thought they were American. I just didn't have a clue. And it's only once he went to like the take the fish back because its fin had grown back or whatever,
Yeah.
and that lady's in there like, "Oh no, you can't do that. It's just like yeah, that was just not where it was at
It,
with those Cockney accents. Just have them do an American accent and say they're in London.
yeah. It's yeah. To be fair, like I'd sort of picked up on the accents, but it didn't really bother me as much because I know how bad mine is. So, I mean, I know mine's not Cockney, but it's you know, it's nothing to shout and praise about.
the I like how seamlessly it went through his like personalities,
Yeah.
and I almost got this might just be me being dim. I almost got lost a little bit, but you know, as it transitioned through them, so I sort of shared his confusion because I was like, "Who is he now?" And
I
it was almost a bit Inception, like, as in like which
yeah,
bits a dream and which bits real. And I think in the end it turned out it was all
real.
real,
Yeah.
but like it was almost a bit like Inception, but it did it very seamlessly. The way it like switched between them, and it there wasn't like there wasn't a like a start initiation point where it was like, oh, we're gonna go into a new phase now. It
No.
just it flowed, didn't it? Ebbed and flowed through it,
Yeah, it was very fluid
which I
in
thought was good.
it was very fluid in the storytelling, and it clearly shows a story that it the the storytelling gets you to be confused as that character as you're watching it because the character's confused. You're viewing it as Steven's perceptive, uh, and for yourself, it obviously showed that, which is good storytelling, and it's good hope for the rest of the episodes that if that storytelling continues to flow, then you're gonna have a brilliant series on your hands, and it obviously that flows quicker. Obviously, it starts off quite slow. You're introduced to the characters kind of not like, oh, this is an origin story sort of thing. You're straight into the action. You know that Steven's got something not quite right with him. You're introduced with him waking up from bed and he's uncuffing his ankle, and he's got all these little bits that he does to make sure he's not like sleepwalking or whatever he thinks he is doing, and then it gradually picks up the pace and you see him sort of deteriorating more and more throughout the episode before the final reveal of Moon Knight.
Yeah, I suppose what we should have a think about now is like what do we actually know about Moon Knight? Because well, obviously we're not experts. We don't know that much. Like what
No clue.
we're sort of going into it blind, so we're sharing the sort of like when we get the reveal of Moon Knight. Apart from all the like promotional stuff and the clips, I don't know what Moon Knight is. I mean, all that I've got the sense of it is that it's like something that's inside of him, that's living inside of him. They reference like Parasite once. I suppose it's a bit similar to like a Venom symbiote in that respect. It's
Yeah,
something to do with ancient Egypt, and this like Moon Knight superhero is relatively powerful because when it fights that in the last bit of the episode, when it fights that sort of Greek wolf demon thing,
yeah,
it beats the hell out of it with ease, doesn't it? So it's
yeah.
obviously relatively powerful.
Well, again, that sort of harkens back to when he's chucked out of that window, or presumed chucked out of that window, and he's broken his jaw, yet it fixes. And I think they kind of show that he's like broken a leg. Obviously, it's behind some like grass or something, so Disney doesn't have to up the rating on the show. But it's clear that something's not quite right with when he stands up or whatever. Um, so as a Moon Knight, because I've just pulled it up on Google here.
I'm just having a look as well.
Yeah, just as a quick summary, it says Moon Knight follows Stephen Grant, a mild-mannered gift shop employee who becomes plagued with blackouts and memories of another life. Stephen discovers he has dissociative identity disorder and shares a body with mercenary Mark Spector.
And what he's controlled by, he becomes a conduit, it says here on Wikipedia, for the Egyptian moon god Khonshu, which I can't pronounce. So obviously that is Moon Knight, and
Yeah,
you can tell it's Egyptian because it's just bloody everywhere.
well,
Absurd, isn't it?
they clearly
And when he has
established
spare
that.
time,
Yeah, they clearly established that right at the start when the little girl, bloody little bug, decides that she's going to stick a chocolate wrapper inside a little pyramid, and he starts nattering on about Egypt, which I think is a nice way to introduce the character, because you think he is this sort of he's a tour guide, and actually he's not. He sells sweets in a museum.
Yeah. Where do we think the series is going to go? For me at the moment, I have no idea. It's obviously going to involve that Ethan Hawke. They've slightly touched on like what his deal is, what makes him tick, and it's obviously that this other female Egyptian god, she can sense, she knows whether someone's going to sin, whether they're good or evil before they do it. So it's like the idea of preventative like measures, like I know they're going to be bad in the future, so I'll dispense with them now, rather than. And obviously, the conflict is going to be. This is what I'm assuming. He's going to have the view of like, no, people have got to make their own mistakes. Like, give them the chance to change.
No, I think there's going to be very much an aspect of that. It'll be interesting to see whether Ethan Hawke character, which I believe is called Arthur Harrow, whether he's going to be the predominant main villain, because there was a actor, and unfortunately I cannot remember his name. He died in a skiing accident. Was it earlier this year?
I don't know.
He plays another character within. I'll see if I can find it now. TV series.
Yeah, but I would say at this point, I don't know where this is going to go, really. I mean, how many episodes is it running for? Are we getting like the standard protocol 6 to 8?
I think it's 6. I've got the.
Yeah,
Wikipedia just says 1 at the moment, which I presume is just the one that's been released.
I think in the next episode, probably going to just see this Moon Knight side established more, because it obviously flitted with it at the very end.
I tell you what,
I think we're going to go on.
Sorry, I've just found something really interesting. Apparently, the actual Stephen Grant bizarre persona is based on English comedian Carl Pilkington.
Yeah, Carl Pilkington.
Which is absolutely class. I tell you what, I can kind of see it. I can
see it a little bit, but he's that classic American of he's just too optimistic, isn't he?
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
Because even when things go bad, he's like got a little optimistic look to it. But I mean, like Carl Pilkinson's response to all that stuff would just be just end me now.
Yeah.
It's too much hassle. But maybe that's not showing his true British colours there.
No, maybe not.
There is not enough pessimism.
Here we are. He's the guy. He's a French actor called Gaspard Ulliel. I might have pronounced that very wrong.
How to pronounce it like a northern British person.
Yeah. He died 19th of January, and he plays a character called Anton Mogart. He first appears as a master thief stealing priceless works of art, jewels, and artifacts all around the world. He became known as Midnight Man because his thefts would take place exactly at midnight. So it seems that his character will be playing a villain, and he's going to be in the Moon Knight show. But whether to what aspect that character plays, after knowing that Ethan Hawke's character will be the sort of main villain. From what it's the one that they've set up to be.
I've just going through now, and it's just reminding me of the scene, and we saw a bit of it in the like promotional stuff. But when he's in his flat and he's getting followed by Khonshu, which is I'm trying to pronounce that right, which is that, do you know the big thing with the long skeletal like beak on its head? When he's getting followed by that, and there's a scene where he's in the lift,
he transitions
and then it cuts to the old lady, but just the way he's holding himself after it, and he just sits there like looking at her. It was so funny, but it wasn't like it was once again. It was like this. It was funny in the way where it was like it was comedic and it made it enjoyable to watch, but it didn't make a mockery of what happened before.
No,
because it was like a genuine, good, like legitimate reaction.
Yeah,
but it was also me not being in that situation. Looked at it and found it funny. I just think it was well done, and it's just that kind of like subtle humor that it's done in a way that's just better than what I've seen previously in with Marvel stuff.
I think as well the humour continued after she got out of the lift, and she's clearly panicking. She's obviously seen something that we.
Oh, and she's saying, "My friend knows. My friend knows that I'm coming over. She's waiting for me." Bang, 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 bang. But he's not trying to like reassure her or cajole because he's just like, he's just completely out of it.
Yeah, it was a good setup, and it obviously it sets up that something's certainly not right, and he's getting closer to whatever this truth is, especially about Mark Spector. I'd be interested to see, is it in the phone it was Layla was the contact? It'll be interesting to see who
Layla was the contact, but then there was who called him like
hundreds
just
of times.
just shy of like a Googleplex times. But then there was that one in there, and I think it was Duchamp or Duchamp.
Duchamp, which I looked up last night because I was curious, because I thought, I'll find a little Easter egg to put on the podcast. And I believe the character is dubbed as Frenchie, and it's like Frankie something Duchamp, and he's like Moon Knight's right hand man and like pilot. So he's a bit like the Sully character to Nathan Drake, sort of in the Uncharted series character. So gets him where he needs to be. So I imagine Duchamp was the one who got him to the Alps potentially, and whether Layla was like a girlfriend of Mark Spector's. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, because obviously because we're following it from his perspective. We just arrived there, but obviously, there is this whole other like interpersonal connections and time that is passing in between these two, where he's just not, where his mind isn't recording, or he's just forgotten, or he's not aware of what's happening.
Yeah,
I think I mean, going into Moon Knight, and obviously knowing a bit about the fact that it's going to be like someone with DID, so this like multiple identities and so on. I just wasn't that compelled by it, and I just thought they weren't gonna do it that well. But I've honestly it's really changed my views after watching the first one, because it was really quite good. And honestly, we're working off the assumption that it's gonna continue being of this standard for the rest of them. It's just gonna be way better than WandaVision, I think, or Loki, or Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to Loki too. Loki season 2 rather, because
Yeah,
I was invested in the first season, but I think this is a completely different
yeah,
avenue
it is. Yeah,
for Marvel. It's not it's something original, very much like the Netflix, like Daredevil and Jessica Jones
yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
but it's it's
It's
not
not from
disassociating
the.
itself with the MCU essentially.
I think it's something that it's not from the offset of Loki, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and WandaVision. It was always playing a bigger part in the MCU.
They were
So I
already
feel like
established
you,
characters with
you,
motives.
yeah. So I spent a lot of the time watching it thinking, how does this fit into the MCU in general, wider? And that's what it played to anyway, didn't it? Like the whole stuff with the Hex
Yeah,
in WandaVision. The way that was wrote is you'd sit there the whole time wondering how this like impacted on the rest of everything else that's going on in the MCU.
yeah,
And it's the same for the other stuff because yeah, they are established characters, but Moon Knight's this like fresh new idea. I'm saying like fresh and new idea, but this new in something different. And obviously, rather than getting it in film format, which sometimes, as of late, the Eternals fresh films from Marvel aren't that good. This is like a series, isn't it? And
yeah.
it's pretty decent.
It is. It's had a good start. I mean, I think compared to the other shows on social media, I haven't actually seen much of a response. But I'll be honest, I recommend it to anybody, whether they're new or existing fans of Marvel. It's you don't have to watch any of the existing Marvel stuff to watch this. It's a completely new start.
How so? Let's think about how we could quantify how much we like this. Like, let's think about we try and rate the first episode. How would how what's kind of scale could we do? So we could do the like 0 to 10, or it could maybe be like I've seen a
I
good
didn't.
way of comparing stuff
I
because
didn't.
it's hard to go on.
I was gonna say I didn't plan this far ahead. I could have gotten us like a tier list sort of thing. Rate out of 10
I know
for
we could have chucked it
CGI,
in with the other
story.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Um, I think a good way of rating stuff, and because I've seen it on a Tom Scott video when he like
I
tried to
love Tom
find like the
Scott.
best thing ever, yeah, is because it's hard to like compare everything at once. So you
Yeah.
just compare it to one thing and see whether it's better or not, and you just do that a load of times. So like honestly, at the moment, if I'm comparing this to the other Disney Plus shows, and I'm including all of them now, so even the Star Wars products, because we're just talking about the overall quality of it.
Yeah, yeah.
In terms of opener, um, I'd say it's just slightly worse than The Mandalorian.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think season ones and two of The Mandalorian was exceptional. It had
Yeah,
exceptional,
it was.
CGI, VFX, everything. Practical effects as well, and obviously the stage that they did everything on from behind the scenes.
Yeah, and
Um,
I
and
think that is what's doing it here is just as an overall product and finished piece, it was just so much more well-rounded and
yeah,
well done
I
in
think
terms of say The Mandalorian then.
yeah. I mean, I have to agree. I think it's in terms of the Disney stuff. I think it's definitely the second like best. It, in terms of quantifying it, I suppose. They
Yeah,
yeah the story is very they had something original to play with a character that wasn't already established, very much like the Mandalorian, and I think that's where the Book of Boba Fett unfortunately fell. They'd already had this established character, and it's
yeah, it holds them back quite often, doesn't it?
yeah, and
And this is like on a slightly different note, but like my big thing with what the MCU just seems to be turning into, and it just purely just seems to just serve like it's just fan service nowadays,
yeah, which
and
I don't. It's not bad, but you've got
like
to
this
do a little bit. You can't just chuck it all in. Not all in at once, anyway. At least you
because
got to spread it out, sort of thing.
even looking at like Spider-Man No Way Home, quite a lot of moments in that which were good were just because they were just like just struck in plucking on nostalgia. And
Yeah.
I just don't want them to become like, especially now because you've got this expanded multiverse, so they can now chuck in different elements and make them connected that we didn't even realize they could have done. And
That's
when they were made at the time, were never intended to be in this big, like, cinematic universe.
yeah. That's
Is just the temptation, just for pure ease, because people will go watch it if it is like that. It's just instead of trying to make a good story and good characters, you just nostalgia. Put Ian Stewart in it. People are
yeah.
like that.
I
But
guess
that's
though we'd have to quantify it to Morbius now, because I know
I'm not
we
even watching that.
no
Don't bring that
we've got
up.
to
Don't
we've
bring Morbius up.
we've got to watch it purely for the fact that I mean I've already seen
I
like
will hate it.
the post
I
credit
I
scene.
I can't. I don't.
No, we've got
I
to watch it. We've got to watch it because that'll be a lovely rant to put on the podcast.
I yeah. If I can make it out of there alive, it
from
just
from
like
what I hear though, Matt Smith is the clear redeeming
yeah,
feature, and even
but that's
the
the
main
annoying
star.
thing. They've wasted Matt Smith.
Yeah,
They've
they have.
wasted him. He's such a good actor. He would just if they put him in the actual MCU, he'd be sick.
Yeah.
Like oh yeah, just so many things. And like Jared Leto, get in the bin, please. And it scares me because it feels like they're trying their best to make it part of the MCU, but they
yeah.
just like all the independent like Sony products that aren't technically like canon and part of the MCU. It seems like the Sony are doing the damned hardest to try and make it part of the MCU.
Yeah.
Like it's the whole thing with the like Venom symbiote now being in the MCU because of a post-credit scene. Ooh, like, and as this is obviously spoilers now, but based on what I've seen about the post-credit scene for Morbius, you get the purple crack in the sky that you got from Far From Home.
You don't even get that
You know,
from what I've seen. No.
oh, from what I've seen, that does appear.
Oh, does it? The bit I've seen is again spoilers ahead. It's just Michael Keaton's Adrian Toomes just appearing in a jail cell, and then he gets released because apparently he mysteriously went there and he was never arrested in that universe. And then all of a
Oh,
sudden,
so
it goes and
so
fly.
in
It goes and flies over to Morbius and meets in like some desert land thing.
so so in the trailers where we're all watching it, going, "Oh, Michael Keaton's oh my god, I've forgotten the character."
Vulture.
Yeah, bloody hell. Michael Keaton's Vulture is in it, and oh, does that mean they're connected and stuff? And it's just
Yeah.
some
The thing is
FBS
though,
post-credit scene.
yeah. The thing is though, I mean, he's got like his mask basically. There's a little bit different. Like he's got like a beak attached to the mask as opposed to like a fighter pilot's thing. But ultimately, the rest of the costume is identical to what he wore in Homecoming.
I think this is a main point now with post-credit scenes of I think it was cool because like they weren't really that much of a thing, were they, before Marvel started to do them?
No.
And all that the post-credit scene served for was if you were a big fan and you could be bothered sitting through the credits, and it's an incentive to sit through the credits so you can see all the people that made the film, is you just got a little bit extra of the film. So just a little extra snippet of the film,
Yeah.
like a continuation of the end scene, or it was just something slight to whet your appetite for what might come in the future.
Yeah.
But nowadays, it's like the whole MCU is just built around one thing that happened in a post-credit scene. Like you can't have really important and critical stuff to like just the functioning of the like story within these films cannot happen in a 1 minute clip at the end of a movie. Has to happen in the main film. That's my opinion anyway. You can't put really important stuff about what's happening in that universe in a post-credit scene because that's just not what they're for.
Yeah. I, I like a good post credit scene, but yeah, I think the Rover overused. I think they serve the time and place, and obviously the MCU is going to have that trope of there's going to be a post credit scene leading up to a new film. I think the one at the end of No Way Home was very fitting because basically it was a first look at the trailer of Doctor Strange 2, which is how it should be used in my opinion. But
Yeah, I think that was a good post-credit scene of just doing a trailer. Like you just got it earlier.
Yeah.
because you went and watched the film. I think that's good. It's just maybe stuff like with the Far From Home, like the Venom symbiote, just that whole monstrosity of a thing.
Yeah.
And I hope the Venom that we get in
It's
the
different.
MCU isn't like Venom in the like Sony Marvel universe.
I'll be honest, it's better than the Sam Raimi one. I love Sam Raimi,
Yeah,
but I think what Sony had done with Tom Hardy's Venom, it's good, but I think it could be better. I don't know how I could make it better. I'll be honest, but
this is my right a bit controversial opinion. Tom Hardy's a very good actor,
it
but I
is.
think he's a bit overrated, and I don't think from what the stuff that I've watched, I don't think he has that much range. I think he
No,
plays a specific. I think he plays a specific type of character and or villain
he does.
very well, but he doesn't. They always end up being sort of similar. But that's obviously why you'd cast Tom Hardy for certain roles. But
Yeah,
like, I just don't think he's good as Eddie Brock.
no.
And
Whereas I think he does an amazing prediction of the Cray twins in Legend.
yeah, because that's what Tom Hardy's like, though, isn't it? A bit unhinged, a bit crazy,
Yeah,
very forceful, very physical. That's why he's good in Mad Max, and that's why he's really good as Bane.
yeah,
In
exactly.
in
Yeah,
Dunkirk, when he's a fighter pilot, he's good as that, but he doesn't really say much anyway, or move that much because he's sat in the cockpit of the Spitfire. But yeah, his characters are, in my opinion, I don't think he's that good of an Eddie Brock. He wouldn't be my Eddie Brock. I find it weird when I hear him doing the American accent,
yeah.
but obviously he's going to have one if he's being an American from San Francisco, and just the Venom symbiote's voice is just ridiculous. But I like the design of Venom.
Yeah, the
I like
design is
that they've gone
very
for it.
good.
It looks good.
Yeah.
It looks good. Um, but yeah, just the Stony products in general. I'm just not compelled to go watch them.
No.
Save Into the Spider Verse, which is obviously was a Sony thing, and that was bloody bussing. But
Yeah.
that's a different
Oh,
topic of conversation.
okay.
So,
Before we round up,
so
then,
yeah,
let's do it out of 10 to quantify for episode 1 of Moon Knight.
uh, you go first. You go first, and then I'll base mine off what you
Oof.
give it.
I'm gonna have to give it a solid 8 out of 10.
An 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10.
I I think I'm gonna go for an 8.14.
Oh, you had to do that, didn't you? You had to go into the points.
an 8 an 8.14, and
8.14.
my score that I'm basing that off. Actually, I'm gonna put that up. Let's say 8.4. I'm gonna put that off just my enjoyment when I was watching it because it took me by surprise. I didn't think I'd like it that much, but when I watched it, it was really quite good.
Yeah.
It changed my mind, and I'm excited for the ones to come. And it was just an all-round enjoyable experience. The stuff that's knocking it down a bit is quite minor stuff, really, that we discussed, and all the other bits that I can't remember that made me give it that score and we've not discussed. But yeah, 8.4, really solid,
No,
better than the other uh, Marvel Disney Plus shows in my opinion so far.
I absolutely agree with you. I think you summed it up beautifully there. Absolutely
Well,
brilliantly. Well,
I think that's a wrap then, isn't
I
it?
think it is. Thank you for listening to the Dunning-Cougar podcast. And we'll see you for
Yeah,
episode 2.
nice one.